Thank you for joining us on the Gold Silver Bitcoin show, brought to you by the GoldSilverBitcoin.com store. We are more than honored to be sitting down today with R.L Bryer. R.L Bryer is an author, an Austrian economist, as well as a Bitcoin minimalist.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. So what are you keeping an eye on? Is there any news that's caught your attention lately, or whether that be in general macroeconomics or Bitcoin?
Right now, I have a close eye on just the overall market sentiment. You know, the macro, we sort of have the macro legacy market, and then us Bitcoiners and cryptocurrency enthusiasts have our own market, you know, the crypto market. So and then within that crypto market, Bitcoin kind of drives that macro. So kind of trying to watch what is happening right now with Bitcoin, and if we're going to break out to new all-time highs before the end of the year. I put out I wouldn't call it a call, but it was sort of like an anticipation in 2019 that we'd hit 65K. So I'm about to find out if I called the mid top or the top of the cycle. I think here in the next maybe 60 days, we'll know whether we're going to make a new all-time high or not.
So you're thinking that 65K is where we're going to end up by the end of the year?
Well, that was my 2019 prediction, that people would take profits at that level and we'd see some sort of massive pullback. But now that we're here, it just seems like maybe we have another leg up still, and that was the sort of the mid top. But right now we're in sort of the middle ground. We haven't really taken out 60K yet, but it just feels like we're probably going to be able to do that. So never give financial advice, but it does feel like you know, market sentiment is probably, Bitcoin's usurping a lot of the market cap across the aggregate market cap across the entire crypto space right now. So it feels like with Bitcoin dominance rising, it could be setting up for, you know, a major run to close out this year. Maybe the beginning of next year, we hit the peak, or late December this year.
What are you looking at? Why do you believe that? We've got predictions of $220,000 by the end of the year coming from Max Keiser, as well as a lot of predictions that are between, say, 100,000 and 220K, I would say. Now, whether this is betokening of that this is where the price is going or not, I'd say that sentiment generally in the Bitcoin space is eyeing at least 100K. What are you looking at in terms of indicators, et cetera?
Yeah, I write a trading column 4 days a week for the Cryptonomist right now. And I'm keeping a close eye on all of the different time scales, and they all seem to be setting up for maybe that run that I'm sort of anticipating. I'm not in the 200 plus camp, 200K plus camp. I'd probably double my mid prediction, or whatever that prediction was, to 65K. I would say maybe we find a new top at 120 to 130. I think that would be a really good place, and probably where I'll end up taking profits. But you know, because human greed is you know, one of those things. So I think with everyone coming in, we'll probably see, you know, that's where the dumb money will really enter, in that vicinity, and that will be like the exit. There'll be the exit liquidity for like the smart money that was accumulating at 3,100 of the last bear market, and then the March 2020 or sell off, the stock, you know, the liquidity crisis from COVID. I think that will you know, that was 3,800. That's the smart money, and we'll find out whether the smart money's still in right now or not soon. I really believe in the next 60 days we'll probably have a really good idea whether we've seen the top of the market or not, because we're just so close to that top now. I think we're probably what is it, 10%, less than 10% away, or yeah, 7 or 8% away from a new all-time high, something like that. 11.9%, yeah, so not too far.
What do you say about the action we saw over the summer? We saw Bitcoin reach the top and then kind of cool off. Did you see that coming? And then, like, what do you say? Did you make any observations about the movement over the summer?
Yeah, the summer was super interesting. It was good to a lot of people in crypto that were the smart money, that were accumulating, you know, 10K, 20K, even 30K on, you know, before the price really started to move. There were a lot of interesting things to watch this summer. One thing I think was, you know, took people by surprise was the reemergence of some of these meme coins. So that kind of like was another top signal to me that we were going to see the mid top, or whatever it turns out to be, that 65K top. That there were some signs that was going to be the top. So, but yeah, as far as like new and exciting things, Definitely the emergence of DeFi since you and I talked 18 months ago is like incredible. The last time you and I talked on your show, on your other show, was April 14th. That's when you published it, April 14th of 2020. So it was like 18 months ago. And in that time frame, the entire DeFi landscape has just like taken off. It's incredible where we are now. So we're really seeing like the emergence of smart contracts, really having utility, not just like some fun thing for where, just like the average nerd that really is into crypto or whatever. Like it's having real world utility now. And I think we're seeing like crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin, all these different environments like grow up before our eyes. It's really cool to watch.
The DeFi projects really continued what was promised by the ICO projects of 2017. So many of the ideas that people were investing in, namely with Bitcoin and Ethereum back during the ICO mania, were espousing ideas or concepts that would lead to what we're calling DeFi today. However, a great many of the projects are not the ICO projects of 2017. So there's not you can't trace back today's projects to the 2017 projects. It's not like that they got raised the funds in 2017, built their projects and all launched in 2020. It seems to be a little bit more spontaneous in some way. This arrival of this DeFi ecosystem, mostly built on Ethereum, as well as made possible by the liquidity or by the automated market makers such as Uniswap and others that have burst onto the scene. So instead of having to raise money with a token, a lot of projects were simply just listing on the decentralized exchanges or their kindred spirits. So I think that I'm focused these days mostly on Bitcoin. And this is where we kind of differ, RL. I'm really passionate about Bitcoin. I do, in fact, think that we're going to be able to build out a bunch of DeFi apps on Bitcoin. I think it's got a ton of issues that the community really won't discuss and never has really wanted to kind of dive down into some of the more like governmental issues, governance issues that have befallen Bitcoin. But I do think that for where we're at and what we've got in the 2020s, Bitcoin offers a potential tool set of diverse solutions. So I think that ultimately we're going to see Lightning become more of a household name. I think we're seeing Lightning be deployed in El Salvador currently, and Twitter has recently incorporated Lightning functionality as well so that people can tip each other. And I think we're also going to see DeFi projects start to crop up on Bitcoin. I'm not sure if that's going to come through RSK or perhaps an upstart solution for DeFi on Bitcoin, but the developers are arguing, generally speaking, that Bitcoin can do much of what Ethereum and the other blockchains have done. They think that it will have to be done in a more modular manner. So there will be layers, which then opens up, of course, a discussion about decentralization.
Right.
But let's be honest, that's the same discussion that we need to have about Ethereum and Ethereum too. I believe there was some information that came out recently about how in some ways Ethereum is run somewhat of an oligarchy and it might be even politicized internally, but Bitcoin has been too. And that was well broadcast over during the block size debate of 2015, I believe. Mike Hearn, of course, left saying that Bitcoin was a failed experiment, namely because of its lack of a governance superstructure. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. You're a Bitcoin minimalist. So maybe we should have a little debate here, but I'm really interested too in the price. I think that's something that people are always really interested about. And for me, it doesn't matter if Bitcoin's $5 or $55,000, as long as it's functional. I think it's going to achieve the goals that need to be achieved to bring choice to our financial lives. And that's really why I am interested in Bitcoin. But I do want to talk about price. So how do you see this playing out over the next kind of few months? So I see there's two different potential futures. I guess one involves a run up to 220K as Max Keiser has predicted. Oftentimes we do see these blow off tops in Bitcoin. 2017 had a classic blow off top. It went from like shy of 10K probably to just shy of 20K very quickly. Very likely, very possibly we could see something like that coming up here over the next 3 months. And then I think there's many scenarios, but another scenario I would see is that Bitcoin essentially makes a run at 100K, and smart money exits early ahead of 100K, probably around like 70, 80K. And
Right.
that's kind of where the run runs out of steam. Now, then of course, I guess needless to say, I'm pretty bullish about Bitcoin generally. Even if it stayed right where it was, I think that would be perfectly a bullish case for it, generally speaking. I don't see it really correcting down significantly for any like, I don't see it crashing at this point. I don't see it crashing from 65 down. So what are your thoughts? How could the next, how could the rest of Q4 play out?
I think that there's a really good chance if we do get across that 65K, or if Bitcoin gets across that 65K line, which we're only $3,000, $3,100 away from right now as we record this. I think there's a very good chance that we go up and test that 65K. I think that we'll probably, like you mentioned, in the 2017 rally, the price broke 10K, and then we saw a very quick doubling up, basically up to just shy of 20, or on some exchanges it did break 20K. So once we break 60K, I think that move to 65K will be come pretty quick in the next maybe week or so. I would expect us to take that out. I have little doubt that that'll probably happen above 60K. And then once 65K comes, I'm sort of in agreement with you about maybe profit. There's probably going to be a couple levels of profit taking along the way. I think 80K will be one of those. And I think you mentioned 75, 70, 80K. I could definitely see that happening. And then 100K will probably, or could be, a barrier, but maybe once 80K is taken out, it just like runs straight to like 10 or something crazy. I could see something really insane happening like that in like 30 days. I think but once we hit like 90,000 and it's all over mainstream media again, it's gonna happen really fast. So all that dumb money we're talking about is gonna show up around 100,000 probably, and it probably will push the price close to 150. But I think smart money will be out by like 120, even though it could double up again. And it definitely could happen, but it's just gonna be how long, what kind of if you're a trader, if you're long Bitcoin and you're a decade long, it really doesn't matter. This is just like all entertainment. But if you're a trader and you're trying to maximize and buy more Bitcoin with the amount of fiat you made on this cycle, which a lot of us want to do, I think that 120 is my target in the end here. So, but I think that definitely could happen by December, which is insane to think about right now. But it took us 12 years to establish, 12 plus years to establish a $1 trillion market cap. And it sounds insane to say you could see it double in a month or in a quarter, but I really think that we could see that happen.
What's the catalyst for the price run up? I think we saw March 2020, there was the great lockdown, assets across the board, commodities, stocks sold off. And then we had Bitcoin, which I think really kind of led the rise back up of across any commodity, gold, silver, and then of course most stocks. Is that how you saw that play out real quick? Just pretty much Bitcoin led the way back up, right?
Yeah, it was just like it was a time of panic, basically. I mean, if we go back in time a little bit and we think about all the things that people were freaking out about not being able to get a hold of, just shows how, unprepared 95% of the population is. That's a made up statistic, but it's probably pretty accurate. But yeah, Bitcoin was sort of like the first place people started putting their money back in once everyone realized that the world would continue. And then you saw all the fiat printing. 40% of we haven't even talked about that. 40% of all dollars were printed since the last time, or whatever it is now. It could be 45% of all dollars have been printed since the last time you and I talked. So that found its way into the stock market, which made all these new highs. And then Bitcoin naturally see, that's the thing I can't figure out, is whether or not we front ran my 65K prediction with all the fiat money that was pumped into the system, or whether that was just a normal mid top, and that the fiat didn't have as much impact. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think what we saw was essentially inflation was created by two dominant decisions and probably many other less dominant decisions. those decisions being the stimulus, the printing, was it $6 trillion? And the other one being the lockdown and then the undermining of the supply chains. This created too much money chasing too few goods. And it was basically inflation by design.
Right.
And we saw Bitcoin start increasing right away, I think. And throughout 2020, I guess it really kind of took off. It was ranging between 10K, 13K, and then kind of took off towards the end of the year. And then it really was holding its own until the summer, where we had the summer doldrums, which is pretty popular, I think, in commodities. A pretty popular, I guess, concept. In the summer, people are away from their desks, people are on vacation, there's less volume, I guess, which would perhaps just lead to more volatility. But for whatever reason, we've got the summer doldrums. And then in the fourth quarter, oftentimes commodities like gold, silver, and Bitcoin, or at least gold and silver. Bitcoin's still new, so I think that we're still kind of learning about it. Gold and silver, particularly, would kind of take off in Q4. This is like doesn't usually happen. It's just like these sort of myths that these industries tell each other. But I think they are interesting, especially after a summer doldrums in Bitcoin, like we've seen. Things have kind of come alive here. We've had, since we spoke, I believe, Fortune 100 companies buying Bitcoin. Of course, Michael Saylor entered in the market. Was he not?
Right.
He's a newbie, right? And so he just recently, I believe, sold something like 600 million in stock. Where's that going? Well, I guess it's probably going to Bitcoin because he wants to pretty much just own Bitcoin. And a lot of these kind of corporate executives argue that Bitcoin is the play. That's what they want. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Bitcoin has it's identified a problem, which is essentially the money printing on the fiat side of things. It's referenced in the code, and it's offered up a solution which has evolved into digital gold away from the electronic peer-to-peer cash, I guess, system that Satoshi designed. But maybe that was like a long-term goal of Satoshi, was to like set up something, were he to stay in the project. And then WikiLeaks never adopted it as the payment mechanism, and the Hornets didn't rush over to Bitcoin as he said, leading eventually to his leaving of Bitcoin after Andreessen visited the CIA, I believe. Yeah. And maybe like ultimately getting to cash was like a long-term goal. And it would be like, first you got to establish Bitcoin as like a gold, and then from there you can like tinker with the features or develop new features to make it like a gold and cash type system. Regardless, here we are with digital gold. That's what we've got. Perhaps Lightning at a second layer can kind of achieve that electronic peer-to-peer cash vision that Bitcoin had for the Bitcoin system. But I think it's behaving like gold. We've got a gold essentially, and it's reacting to the printing right now, the supply chain lockdowns, the IRS announcement that it'll track all anytime an account goes above $600, I believe maybe you have to fill out a form. The bank does. It's like a reporting requirement. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. Right. And then I mean, what is Bitcoin not reacting to, really? I think we've got generals all across the world saying that like there's an increased likelihood of conflict with China. That's something that a digital gold theoretically would react to. We got the lockdowns. We kind of covered that. General distrust in central banks. We've got central banks basically, I guess I want to tell you something. It's pretty funny, but and it involves the Federal Reserve too. But first, we got to read this headline that's been breaking now.
Okay.
Fed says it could begin gradual tapering process by mid-November. Federal Reserve officials could begin reducing the extraordinary help they've been providing to the economy by as soon as mid-November, according to minutes from the central bank September meeting released on Wednesday. The meeting summary indicated that members feel the Fed has come close to reaching its economic goals and soon could begin normalizing policy by reducing the pace of its monthly asset purchases. That's hilarious. It's reached its economic goals. It's are his economic goals back in 1913 not like to ensure employment and not inflation, to keep the cost of goods stable? So that's hilarious. But in Orwell, he noted that like war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, right here. So when they're like, our goal is
Money is
to,
paper, paper is money.
yeah. And this one's like, so Fed's goal apparently is the opposite of what its kind of mission was when it was instituted in 1913 by an act of Congress.
Nothing
So
is what it seems, that sort of thing. Yeah.
all right, so they're going to start normalizing their policy. They've achieved their goals by like totally decimating the U.S. economy in a
Right.
process known as tapering, as if what the tapering is going to normalize things. In a process known as tapering, the Fed would reduce the 120 billion a month in bond buys slowly. The minutes indicated the Fed probably would start by cutting 10 billion a month in treasuries and 5 billion a month in mortgage-backed securities. The target date to end the purchases, should there be no disruptions, would be by mid-2022. The minutes noted that, quote, participants generally assessed that provided that the economic recovery remained broadly on track, a gradual tapering process that concluded around the middle of next year would likely be appropriate. What's your reaction to that?
My reaction to that is I think we had an all-time high last month of people that quit their jobs. Like people were like fleeing the workforce because of all this vaccination garbage. It's just all, like you said, it's the Ministry of Truth or whatever, the Ministry of News or whatever you want to call it. Like it's all these, it's just ridiculousness. And I wanted to touch on one last thing. We were talking about the price. The last time you and I talked, it was under $7,000. So seeing it double again in price would not even be that insane to me. But I think that's going to be driven by the normal supply shortage or supply shock that happens after these halvings. So that's another reason that we didn't get to that I want to just mention real quick, that I think is, the programmatic nature of the supply and the reduction after these halvings says that we should get that run. But as far as the Fed, it's like, I mean, I don't believe, it's not, are they going to do the right thing? Have they ever done the right thing? So I kind of doubt that sounds like they're trying to scare people to me. That a lot less likely that even happens. Maybe they're trying to create the same sort of sell-off event that they were able to managed to do in 2020 when they kind of created a little bit of a sell-off event there. But I just don't I don't put much faith in the Fed, and I don't think, like you mentioned, I think maybe this last year of the last 2 years of central banks around the world just printing endlessly, people are finally catching on to this, complete scam, for lack of a better word, the central banking is. I mean, the entire centralized, the entire idea of centralization is failed over and over again, and it seems like some people just have it's always going to be different to them. They pump themselves up and they believe that these professors and these people that don't have their best interests at heart. And I like Hans Hermann Hoppe a lot, and he talks about this, about how one of my favorite Austrians, about how people in academia have this sort of words are very, like, people aren't ready to like jump out of a window to pay you to write things. People, are ready to pay you for manufactured goods per se, but there's not academia is not necessarily in high demand. So it's very easy to get these intellectuals, or these people that claim to be intellectuals, on the payroll. And you've kind of seen like the world just, I mean, it's so polarized now. There's this dichotomy between people who kind of know what's going on and these other people that are like completely gone, just like to levels that I didn't even think were possible when I started learning about Bitcoin, that we've just seen. It just has gone to like Looney Tune levels. So yeah, are they, but more people are catching on. But that is the thing, that there's this group that is so invested in academia and what they've been programmed to believe, that they're going to go down with the ship, I guess, and they're not going to get the Bitcoin life raft or the gold and silver life rafts that you and I are after. They're going to be riding their wheelbarrow to the the bread line here pretty soon. So
we see the dichotomy between the knows and know nots in the Bitcoin space, the crypto space as well. And it's something that I started noticing in 2017 with the Ethereum newcomers, where the Ethereum curious newcomers were
Mhm.
um, like basically democratic socialists oftentimes. And I found that as a surprise as somebody who had been in the space since
Right.
2012 when it was essentially just all big libertarians,
Mhm.
um, anarcho-capitalists, but predominantly probably cypherpunks, right? Who oftentimes are Austrian economic curious or capitalists.
I
And
think that's a good point. The old guard, not to, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the old guard, just wanted to add to that, is definitely like, I think those two are like, you can't even separate the Austrian cypherpunks. Like I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
yeah, perfect. And so then it started to be a little different in 2017. And then now, as the reflection of the whole entire world that this industry is, it's a real dichotomous. And it's, I've professionally, I've been having trouble in this space because I've been like, I really pretty much just want to work with the knows, the ones who like understand that how the world works. So for instance, on the Federal Reserve, I thought this was very illuminating.
Mhm.
Recently, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has confirmed that the US has had no plans to ban Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So this is a video that I saw between Ted Budd and Jerome Powell, and it's actually more to the point. The the representative, Bud Powell, no, I'm sorry. Let's see here. He's a House Representative Ted Budd. He's a Republican from North Carolina. Asked the Chairman Powell if the Fed had any plans of banning Bitcoin. So this is literally what he says. The representative asked the chairman of the Federal Reserve, so, Mr. Chairman, is it your intention to ban or limit the use of cryptocurrencies like we're seeing in China? And Powell replied no. And the press went with it. The Federal Reserve doesn't have any plans of banning Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. Now, since when did the Federal Reserve have lawmaking power? And how come our own representatives don't even understand that they don't have that power?
Yeah, they've the press is definitely conflating that with the SEC too, because they don't actually have authority over crypto either. So, but you've kind of seen like it's a great point. You actually just saw that with Gensler, Gary Gensler, and what he said to Coinbase about telling them not to do their lending that they were getting ready to release. Like he told them not to do it, and they didn't do it. So they had this like de facto authority that, like you mentioned, is nowhere in the Constitution, which is like just another just beats the drum a little more for me. It's like as an anarcho-capitalist, it's like we can come up with this great constitution or whatever at one point, but eventually it's just eroded by and that's another reason I love Hans Hoppe so much. He just explains democracy and so well, and how it always ends up being just like the worst rise to power, and it's going to be complete mob rule. And somehow people convince themselves that because democracy in theory is this open open platform, or that you could, our neighbors, we could all become president, like everyone has this sort of belief because it's instilled so young in democracy, but it's really just people that are working towards being the best, demagogue, and expropriating the most, and doing the most backroom deals. It's always going to be like the worst people want to seize that power. And not to talk too much about like the Mises Institute, but like Judge Napolitano talks about that, and I always like to talk about that as like libido dominandi. It's like these are the worst of the worst, and that's the reason I was so interested in Bitcoin in the beginning, is because we, like you said, we have definitely seen, and that's coming with our success as like making Bitcoin popular, or whatever you want to call it, proving that it has utility. Because in the early days, people would just say, "Oh, Bitcoin, you're just some drug dealer on the internet or whatever," like. But we've proven that it has real utility and that it's going to be around. But yeah, it's just interesting to see like how far we've come. But along the way, we've definitely like, I think personally, maximalists have lost their way too, because they've become like toxic, and not just because of the toxicity, which I don't enjoy, but because by becoming a Bitcoin maximalist, they've sort of become the people that we don't like the most. Like, to me, Bitcoin is about the competition of money. and we should be embracing the competition of money. And I don't think that closing off the ideas is a good idea. I think we should have an open mind. Now, do I think that Ethereum or anything else in the entire world is better than money than Bitcoin? Absolutely not. But I do think I do disagree with you on DeFi. I think that DeFi needs to be done somewhere else, because I think that we should just leave Bitcoin to be this simplistic, beautiful monetary network. And I don't think it needs to be done on Bitcoin. But I do understand why some people want that decentralization. But I think that I think the risk is higher than the reward there, because there are platforms that already do it. And like you mentioned, it's going to be done on another layer, and it's going to be highly centralized. And I think you're seeing that sort of already with Liquid. People really haven't taken the Liquid at all, the sidechain Liquid for on Bitcoin. So just something that I'm thinking about. We'd have this little debate here. Um,
Any other comments on Liquid?
I don't have a ton of comments on Liquid. It's not something I personally have even gotten into at all, but I just know that it hasn't been much of a success, to be honest with you.
From Blockstream.
Right, right.
Blockstream's involved in El Salvador, as are many kind of who's who. Certainly,
Right.
I mean, they're sending up like nodes to space and stuff. I'd be curious to really know like some of the truly tangible progress that has been made on projects like RSK, where you're actually kind of seeing some interesting DeFi solutions pop up, like sovereign, money on chain, etc. And then furthermore, let's see with Blockstream too, it's a kind of a little bit more opaque, I suppose, in some ways. But there's a ton of functionality that like Taproot and others that Bitcoin proponents argue when it comes to kind of the Bitcoin maximalism, toxic maximalism, or Bitcoin minimalism. I'm just looking at like professionally, like on a day-to-day
Right.
basis. I want to spend like most of my time just kind of focusing on the Bitcoin ecosystem and economy. And I think that the stronger that Bitcoin is, the better off a lot of the other projects will be. We can learn from each other. So in that way, I think my like view of Bitcoin and crypto is that these are two separate things. Everything else is an altcoin for a reason. They reference themselves based on Bitcoin. And therefore, I think that I try to tease them out and I look at them as two different things. Bitcoin is its own institution in so many ways. And then there's cryptocurrency and crypto. And I wouldn't tease Ethereum out to be on its own. I would just simply argue that Ethereum is that blockchain with the most particularly DeFi adoption. And I don't think it stands on its own as an institution like Bitcoin does. So now we've got two different discussions. We've got Bitcoin, the Bitcoin experiment, and we've got cryptocurrency, which includes DeFi, which might even just evolve to be DeFi. It might really just be kind of like Bitcoin, DeFi. And even then, Bitcoin is kind of like the leader of decentralized finance. So whenever I speak with people who, for instance, don't understand that Dogecoin has an infinite supply and Bitcoin has a finite supply, I explain that to them up front. And when I ever speak about cryptocurrency with people who perhaps aren't native to it like you and I are, I do try to like tease out the Bitcoin and the from the rest, because Bitcoin is where you're going to be able to start talking about basic economics, which I think people need to understand first before they even look at DeFi.
Couldn't agree more.
And so then from there, then you can introduce someone to all the awesome concepts. The only issue with all these technologies is the World Wide Web. Like it would be great to have a more decentralized World Wide Web. That really kind of that's the killer app of blockchain, is a truly decentralized kind of web. I'm very fascinated with the co-optation of blockchain, generally speaking, the commercial adoption thereof, in which distributed ledgers are referred to as blockchains. So for instance, when people don't like that, or when people are skeptical that Microsoft can introduce a cryptocurrency patent in which it's going to track your body actions and then reward you with cryptocurrency kind of like the movie In Time with Justin Timberlake. They think that this could perhaps be used for nefarious purposes. And it's referred to as like blockchain technology, but I think like largely what we're looking at are distributed ledger technologies. And so the skeptics thereof need to understand that corporate America, for whatever reason, is labeling distributed ledgers blockchains, and that these are two separate concepts. I think Bitcoin is a sound money. It's a solution to a problem we need now, and I certainly don't mean to. I don't degrade any of the other experiments, really. It is tragic that so many people coming into this space don't understand the basic concept of a finite and an infinite supply, especially as it relates to like wanting to make money, which so many do in this space. That's a tragedy of the commons. We brought up the Fed. I think you made it clear that you don't expect the Fed to taper. I think I spoke with Gregory Mannarino yesterday, and he thinks that, kind of like you said they're trying to drum up fear in a way with this, that he thinks that they're just saying this and that they're probably not likely to taper.
I kind of doubt it. Yeah, I wanted to say one last thing about what we were talking about, because that's such an interesting thing. I view it a lot like you. That I think we're gonna have this multi-chain world, and I view Bitcoin as hands down the most influential, important piece of technology in the history of the world. It's not even close. It's like the thing that could free all of the slaves, which is everybody who lives under a central bank and the people who couldn't get bank accounts, all over the world. So I view it as like maybe the best tool for human freedom ever. And it probably is. So I don't want to sound like I'm anti-Bitcoin or anything. I love Bitcoin, but I think DeFi, I really believe that DeFi could be done on another chain, but there is the risk of centralization. But yeah, I don't think the Fed will do the right thing. This is probably just more of the same old scare tactics. I know I think they're still trying to get the infrastructure built through. I try to stay out of the political realm as much as possible, but you have to follow it a little bit to make sure that maybe they're not going to put a black swan on us or something like that. You have to be at least mindful of what's coming, but yeah, I don't think the Fed will do the right thing. They never do. So if the amount of money that has been printed over the last 2 years is just remarkable. I talked to a professor of economics at Duquesne, I think it might have been like right before the pandemic started. He was already telling me that the national debt was actually closer to like 250 trillion or something like that, 250, 300 trillion. I know that they say it's like, what is it, 27, 28 trillion right now. But if you actually account for like all of the non-balance item sheet things on the debt, it's actually closer to like $300 trillion or whatever. So they know they never have any. It's really the slow. It's like bringing a frog to boil. The slow burn or whatever over time that they're just going to they chip away a little bit. Even if you take a 1% a year, you can see what it's done over the last 108 years since the Fed was launched in 1913 or whatever. So it's definitely concerning. But like I said earlier, you and I have these life rafts, and we have to make sure. Like, I do my best to educate people. I do have a Patreon group where I try to teach people about all this stuff, and like I said, I'm writing a lot and things like that. But maybe one of the problems is the loudest voices on Twitter are often like the toxic people, and they kind of like drive a lot of the narrative, because I don't know, people like the showman, like you and I having this polite conversation isn't exactly like what people were always looking for they want WWF or WWE or whatever. They like the loudest person a lot of times just for entertainment.
So I think, yeah, Twitter, you nailed it. I had that thought earlier. Like, so all the toxicity that's going on in Bitcoin and crypto generally is on Twitter. And what I think of is Max Keiser, who was yelling like F Elon. And that was kind of highlighted as toxic maximalism. But Max Keiser is a comedian. Okay. So this guy's
Max Keiser is an interesting guy. And, He's probably the only Bitcoin maximalist that I remember. I think I'm pretty sure I beat Max to Bitcoin. I think he got it in 2010 or 2011. I was in 2009, late 2009. But Max is he's always been the same person. So he like you said, he's a lot of show or whatever, but he's a smart guy. I don't have anything bad to say about Max, but one of the first things I remember watching about a good speech about Bitcoin was from Max. It was from 2011. I think it was 2011. He did a speech in London, and it's pretty good. It's on YouTube. I think it's probably still on YouTube. So if you get the time to watch that, he's talking about how in other countries, money is money is just a medium of exchange a lot of times, and in these other countries that aren't as lucky as you and I, maybe living in the United States in some ways, they were trading like packs of chewing gum and Tide detergent and things as a store of value and as a medium of exchange. They were like literally using these to do commerce. So it's interesting. Like, but what he was talking about in this not to get on Max, off topic too much, but what he was talking about is like how much better is Bitcoin than a pack of chewing gum, or these notes that they're printing endlessly. So I think the writing is on the wall now. Like a lot of people, I don't want to call us all visionaries, but we were crazy enough to believe this could work, and now we're sort of just seeing like everyone else have that light bulb moment as they like print this endless amount of money. So it is interesting, but yeah, Max is a super interesting guy who's definitely one of the old Bitcoin OGs.
Who, with unrelenting hilarity since the global financial crisis, has alerted everyone to the threat of central banks, the issue of printing money with reckless abandon, dating back to when the $1 trillion bailouts took place on mainly European news channels. He wasn't apparently allowed on US based networks. And so he had a number of shows back then on the edge. He's always had the Keiser report is still alive and well today. He now does the Orange Pill podcast, and he's done very well on Twitter, sort of kind of creating, we'll call it a discussion, a healthy, angry discussion around Bitcoin and then cryptocurrencies. And I think that is really kind of reflective of the social medias in general. So the social medias in general kind of flag the flames of anger and perhaps even negativity. And I think Sean Parker from Napster warned us about that. So that's one thing. But Max, over the last 12 years, when I've been watching his stuff, has made hilarious commentary on essentially the tragedy that is the modern banking system run by central banks. Like they're basically a bunch of mafiosos. And that's kind of been his point on very large channels. So he's been a champion of financial freedom since before he was in Bitcoin. He was back then into gold, into silver. He started the buy silver, crash JP Morgan movement, which this was relevant back then due to JP Morgan's large silver short position, but that market has evolved since then. So it was a movement.
Like 2012 or something?
I think it must have been 2011 and 12, perhaps. And that was a movement that was confined to time and space. It was kind of like a original Wall Street bets in a way, activism based investing. He also had the Silver Liberation Army, which was a movement to free the silver market from the manipulation of central and private bankers. So then, I mean, from there, he's an analyst as silver goes from $9 to $50. He was often on Alex Jones' show as well. That was probably the only US based, one of the only US based media outlets that would have Max on. I believe, shortly after this period, as he called the run up in gold and silver as a result of the global financial crisis and the money printing of that time, then discovered Bitcoin and got into Bitcoin, I believe in 2011. And he understood the basic monetary theory, the Austrian basis, behind Bitcoin. And yeah, I mean, he probably also understood it as well as kind of like a peer-to-peer money, just like there used to be the peer-to-peer file sharing of BitTorrent. Napster was more centralized, but it kind of
Right.
was introduced the world to P2P. So, um, I mean, then he, of course, starts Heisenberg Capital in Bitcoin, and he invests in, some of the household names in Bitcoin today, many of whom are also fueling what's happening on the DeFi side of things. So I think Keiser's been hilarious. I remember a joke on European television like 12 years ago where he was like, yeah, well, they're going to bring the global financial system down level by level by level, just like the Twin Towers. And
Yeah.
I think that's noteworthy today after the Great Lockdown, which of course broke down supply chains, the money printing, which hyper inflated the currency on a long enough timeline, probably that's coming. And they created inflation by design, just like Keiser said they were going to do. And I think he
He's been
is
right on a lot of counts.
he's a gateway drug to Bitcoin, which is a gateway drug to all the other cryptocurrencies. So really, I think a lot of the kind of altcoins owe a great debt of gratitude to Max Keiser.
Yeah, he definitely red pilled or orange pilled a lot of people in the space. I can't deny that at all. And he is a funny guy. I'll say one more thing here. I know we're wrapping up here soon. That it is kind of humorous now that that we have this sort of narrative around Bitcoin as digital gold, which I don't mind at all. I'm not one of those people that minds, because it's funny because so many people embrace that narrative now that I'm pretty sure that transactions on chain are probably cheaper than they were at the peak of the 2020 or the 2018, 2017. I think December 20th, 2017, I think was the old all-time high when we took out like 19.9 or 19.7 or whatever it was. So it's kind of funny that even if you want to use Bitcoin on chain now, it's really relatively cheap. It's not that crazy. I mean, if you're sending a decent amount of money across the world, it's still probably one of the best methods. And then yeah, so that I would just say that it doesn't have to be one thing. Bitcoin is different things to different people, and it has different utility, different functions to different people. It can be your bank account and savings account. It can be just a quick medium of exchange to somebody across the world. I mean, I know the block times aren't super fast, and you might have to wait to get included in a block, but it's still, settlement's not crazy. I don't have too many problems when I use it still as money, so it's still good money, and it's great. It's proven that it's the best store of value. So I think we're gonna really see some crazy things this decade. Starting to really believe that we could actually hit $1 million this decade. So I definitely think we're going to see. I think 500,000 would probably be a very safe bet, and then maybe we'll see 1 million or something. That would not shock me at all.
So as the Winklevoss twins argue, the gold market is about 10 trillion, which would put Bitcoin at around $500,000 to $600,000 per coin. They think that it's gold 2.0, it's going to do better than that. And a lot of this is the result of our feeling that we probably won't get tapering anytime soon.
100% agree with you and the Winklevi. I think there's a very, very strong possibility that we pass that gold threshold in the next 5 years. It wouldn't shock me, because I could see the Bitcoin market cap alone going to 3 trillion. I mean, that would put the price just over 164K or something like that, So or 174,000 maybe. So yeah, definitely could go to 3 trillion this cycle if we're indeed going higher. And then maybe we pull back to like where we're at now, or maybe a little bit lower, and we start building up for the next cycle, which could take us really to the that crazy marker of maybe 500,000 or 350,000, something like that.
We've had the honor of sitting down today with R.L. Bryer. R.L. Bryer is an author. You can find his work at Bryer.io. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Justin, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I got to get you back on my show soon. Thanks for having me on. It's always a lot of fun, and you have a good insight, so I appreciate you.
Likewise, thank you everyone for listening. What's up, everyone? I hope you enjoyed the show. Head on over to GoldSilverBitcoin.com for more content like this, as well as long-form written articles about precious metals, Bitcoin, and other topics. Also, check out our shop where you can get precious metals, storable foods, and all sorts of other cool survival and prep gear as well.